being here, and I hope I've had a chance to speak to everyone and greet you. I'm so appreciative that you're here today, especially with the, it's not always the good weather on Friday sometimes, is it? But y'all amaze me. You still show up, and I'm thankful. Well, first of all, before we do anything, let's ask the Lord, I feel we would like to talk about. And very blessed today to have our representative, Bobby Franklin. Would you stand, sir, like the scripture right now?
I'm going to brag on him a minute because something went on Monday, and we're working on a video so that to put on YouTube so everybody can watch it. But the Senate overrode the governor's veto of the Zero-Based Budgeting Act. Now, according to the Georgia Constitution, it has to go to the other house if the house it originated in overrides the veto. Well, our speaker down there in the house thinks that he's God, and he decided that he didn't want to vote on that. Well, he was the only one who stood up to uphold the Constitution. So, without further ado, Bobby Franklin.
Can everybody hear and see? And sorry if you can see, but can you hear? Can you? What I wanted to talk a little bit about is that federal judges in Pensacola's ruling on Obamacare. Because all I'd originally heard was that he struck it down as unconstitutional because Congress didn't have the authority to step so far as to require you to buy health insurance. And I thought that was pretty good. And I did hear someone say on this side of the room that at least with that case it would go to the 11th Circuit in Atlanta. I do not hold much hope for anything out of the 11th Circuit. Remember, that is the appeals court that ruled against Alabama Chief Justice Roy Moore. So I've got no hope coming out of that lawless crowd. But I don't know. Has anyone read that that Florida opinion striking down Obamacare? Because I've got you've read it. Did you?
75 pages.
Yeah. 78. Did you get to the conclusion? Because that's I really didn't care how he reached his opinion. I wanted to know what his opinion was. And he started out with some great things. Regardless of how laudable its attempts may have been to accomplish these goals in passing the Act, the Obamacare Act, Congress must operate within the bounds established by the Constitution. That's pretty good, isn't it? Yeah. Again, this case is not about whether the Act is wise or unwise legislation. Now, I don't know about you, but I can't recall that really being a criteria. Is it wise? The criteria is it constitutional? Then he goes on, it is about the constitutional role of the federal government. Right on the money again. And then he gives the good part. This is the part that we've heard on the news. For the reasons stated, I must reluctantly, and why does the guy reluctantly? That bothers me. I must reluctantly conclude that Congress exceeded the bounds of its authority in passing the Act with the individual mandate. And that's where the news stories stop, isn't it? Then what does he say? He basically, if he gave the appeals court, he gave the Supreme Court the reason to overturn him. When he says, that is not to say, of course, that Congress is without power to address the problems and inequities in our health care system. Where does he find that in Article 1, Section 8, I ask you? Can anybody answer that? It's not there. The health care market is more than 1/6 of the national economy, and without doubt, he says, Congress has the power to reform and regulate this market. He rules it unconstitutional, but then he says it is constitutional. Pardon me, but that bothers me.
No, he says that it can override the Constitution.
Well, he says that Congress has the power to reform and regulate the health care market, which they don't have. It's not in Article 1, Section 8. These states never gave the federal government the power to reform or regulate the health care market. And this is the sad part. This is an an indictment against the states, all 26 of them. That has not been disputed in this case. Not a single state that brought suit against Obamacare challenged it on the basis that Congress never had the authority in the first place to get involved in health care. And that ought to disgust us all. Then he says the principal dispute has been about how Congress chose to exercise that power, rather than that Congress didn't have the power, which they didn't. So this is not a ruling that freedom-loving people need to get excited about. And then he tells us on the next to the last page, in closing, I will simply observe once again that my conclusion in this case, and listen to these words, is based on the application of the Commerce Clause law as it exists pursuant to the Supreme Court's current interpretation and definition. Is this something we ought to be excited about? No.
Well, I'm excited in that it's wrong.
Well, but he basically gave them the roadmap for its overturning, and that really gets us down to a lot. Is we can be really revved up and worked up about the federal tyrannies that we see, but what about state and local tyranny? Because until we can address tyranny at home, I believe you'd mentioned our school taxes, our local taxes, that it's the tyranny at home that really is closer to home that we can much more easily address with our local elected officials. Right now, I know in my county, you've got to have 2 acres just to have a chicken to feed your family. Look at Article 1, Section 8. You won't find anywhere where the states authorize the federal government to have any jurisdiction over immigration. Naturalization, you betcha. Who becomes a citizen? Immigration, not at all. There is no such thing constitutionally as federal immigration law. It's unconstitutional. That bill is chock full of references to federal immigration law. And I have suggested to those, to D.A. King and those who are pushing the law, I said, get that unconstitutional stuff out of it. Because it does not help us. We would be violating our oath to uphold the U.S. Constitution if we voted for that bill in its current form.
And if that passes, do you not think it will put us in the Arizona spotlight and we'll be sued as well?
Well, what it would do, if we had a governor with, we're in mixed company. If we had a governor with backbone, let's say, we would say, well, you don't have jurisdiction here. We're not answering your lawsuit. And so we could care less about you because this is a state issue, not a federal issue. But that's